Hello, everyone. Today I want to share with you a very special story. The story is not just about a young man in a small village, but also about you, about me, about all of us. Because deep down, each of us has great dreams and aspirations, but sometimes we let laziness or procrastination hold us back. And perhaps, by the end of this story, you will ask yourself, what seed am I nurturing in my life? Ambition or laziness? So, without wasting any more time, let's get started right away. Amir fell to his knees in the middle of the barren field, his hands torn and bleeding from pulling out weeds with desperation. The land that once promised golden harvests was now a graveyard of broken dreams. The field was overrun with wild, choking weeds, and in the center stood a fragile little sapling, thin and trembling, its leaves withered as though begging for one last drop of care. Amir wrapped his arms around the dying plant, tears streaming down his face, and whispered in a voice heavy with regret, "I've killed my own dream with my own hands." The words cut through the evening air like a confession of a sinner. Behind him, his uncle stood silent for a moment, his weathered face unreadable, then spoke with sorrowful weight. "This is your life, Amir. No one else is to blame but you." That night, the truth about Amir spread through the village like wildfire. For years, he had been the young man of big words and bigger promises, always talking about success, wealth, and respect. Yet here he was, defeated, his future destroyed by the very thing he had carried with him every day, his own laziness. Now, pause here for a moment. Imagine this scene. A young man, strong and healthy, reduced to tears in the dirt, watching his dreams rot away before his eyes. It feels like a tragedy, doesn't it? But here's the twist. This story is not just about Amir, it's about all of us. Because how many times have we told ourselves, "I'll start tomorrow"? How many times have we let our dreams fade, not because we lacked talent, but because we lacked action? Before we dive deeper into Amir's journey, I invite you to stay with me until the very end. And if you're the kind of person who often dreams but struggles to take the first step, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this story, because Amir's downfall might just change the way you see your own life. Years before that heartbreaking scene in the field, Amir was far from being the hopeless figure the village now pitied. In fact, he was one of the most admired young men in the community. At 25, Amir was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of energy that made people believe he could accomplish anything. His eyes burned with vision, and his words carried the confidence of someone destined for greatness. Sitting under the shade of the old banyan tree, he would often boast to his friends, "One day, my field will be the richest in this village. When harvest season comes, the land will shine like gold. People will come to me for advice, and I will be respected by all." The way he spoke, people wanted to believe him. In a small village where most were content with simple survival, Amir's bold declarations sounded like music. Yet, as the months turned into years, the gap between his words and his actions widened until it became an unbridgeable gulf. At sunrise, when the other men walked to their fields with tools on their shoulders, Amir was still in bed, pulling the blanket tighter, telling himself he'd get up tomorrow. At noon, while others sweated under the blazing sun, Amir sat in the shade, weaving dreams with his tongue. He spoke passionately of his golden future, but his hands remained clean, untouched by soil or sweat. The villagers, at first amused, began to grow impatient. They shook their heads, whispering behind his back, "Amir, the dreamer, all ambition, no effort." One evening, as the sky glowed with crimson light, Amir's uncle, an old farmer bent with age but sharp in wisdom, came to see him. He walked slowly across Amir's land, stopping in silence. The soil was fertile, yet nothing grew. Weeds crept up, mocking the empty promises of its owner. Finally, the old man turned to Amir. "My son," he said, voice heavy, "you speak of golden crops and great wealth, yet your land is empty, barren. Why?" Amir laughed carelessly. "Uncle, don't worry. Tomorrow I'll start. You'll see, this land will shine. Just give me time." The old man sighed deeply. He had heard this tomorrow too many times. He knew his nephew's disease wasn't lack of knowledge or opportunity. It was laziness. And laziness, if left unchecked, spreads like poison. That night, the uncle reached into his pocket and pulled out 2 small bags. In one were shiny seeds, bright and smooth. In the other, dull, rough grains. He placed them in Amir's hands and said with grave seriousness, "These are not ordinary seeds. One is the seed of ambition. Plant it, water it every day, and it will grow into a mighty tree that gives fruit, shade, and prosperity. The other is the seed of laziness. Plant it, and it will spread quickly, covering your land with weeds, destroying everything in its path. Amir, your life will become whatever seed you choose to nurture." Amir's eyes lit up. The thought of a magical seed excited him. "Of course, I'll plant the ambition seed," he declared. "I want success. I'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow, always tomorrow. But when the next morning came, Amir stretched lazily in bed and whispered, "I'm too tired today. Tomorrow will be better." Days slipped by. He told himself the same excuse again and again. Finally, out of boredom more than conviction, he went to the field and made a careless choice. "Why not plant both?" he thought with a smirk. "I can always deal with it later. What harm could it do?" So he sowed both seeds into the same soil, believing he could outsmart the lesson his uncle had tried to teach. Weeks passed, and Amir forgot about the seeds. He spent his days talking, sleeping, and daydreaming about his future. He never watered, never cared, never lifted a finger, until one fateful afternoon when he wandered back to his field and froze. The laziness seed had exploded into life. Thick weeds covered the soil like a suffocating blanket, crawling in every direction. They had consumed the land, strangling every possibility of growth. And there, nearly hidden, was the ambition seed. It had sprouted weakly, starved and fragile, fighting for light but nearly dead. Amir's chest tightened. He fell to the ground, clawing at the weeds with bare hands, trying to save the little sapling. But the truth was undeniable. His own neglect had allowed laziness to grow stronger than ambition. In that moment, he understood. Dreams are fragile. They demand daily effort, care, and sacrifice. Without action, they die. But laziness thrives on neglect. It needs nothing to grow, yet it can destroy everything. And so Amir wept in the dirt, clutching the dying seedling, realizing he had been his own enemy all along. The night after Amir's collapse in the field was long and heavy. He couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the image of that dying sapling, struggling to survive among weeds. The silence of the village only made his thoughts louder. For the first time in his life, he admitted to himself that his laziness was no longer just a bad habit. It was a thief, robbing him of the future he once dreamed about. He tossed and turned, whispering into the darkness, "If I don't change now, laziness will own me forever." But knowing the truth and acting on it are two very different things. That gap between realization and action is where many dreams are buried. Would Amir finally rise up? Or would he once again tell himself, "Tomorrow"? The next morning, before the rooster crowed, Amir forced himself out of bed. His body resisted. His mind screamed for comfort. Yet something deep inside had shifted. He walked to his field, and for the first time he truly saw the scale of destruction. Weeds everywhere, roots tangled like chains, soil hardened by neglect. He fell to his knees, hands digging into the earth. He pulled weeds until his palms bled, sweat dripping onto the parched soil. Every thorn that pricked his skin felt like punishment for years wasted. And yet, for the first time, he felt alive. His uncle, who had been silently watching from afar, finally approached. "It hurts, doesn't it?" the old man said gently. Amir nodded, breathing heavily. "Yes, but I deserve this pain." "No," his uncle corrected. "You don't deserve pain. You deserve the harvest of your choices. This pain is only the first step. The real question is, will you keep going tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that?" Those words struck Amir harder than any blow. For the first time, he realized change wasn't about one heroic act. It was about consistency, and consistency was something he had never practiced in his life. In the following weeks, Amir fought a battle most people never see. Not against the weeds in the soil, but against the weeds in his mind. Every morning, the temptation whispered, "Just rest, sleep a little longer. One day won't hurt." But Amir forced himself up, remembering the weak sapling that depended on him. He bent his back to the field. He tore out weeds until his nails cracked. He watered the fragile plant carefully, watching its tiny leaves quiver with life. Each day, the sapling grew just a little stronger, and with it, Amir's willpower also grew. But it wasn't easy. The village, which once laughed behind his back, now watched curiously. Some mocked. "Look at him now, trying to play farmer after all these wasted years." Others shrugged. "It's too late. His field is ruined." The cruelest part? Amir himself often believed them. He would look at the endless weeds, the small sapling, and feel despair rising like a tide. What if I've already lost? What if I'll never catch up to the others? It was during one of these moments of doubt that his uncle sat beside him under the moonlight. The old man picked up a handful of soil and let it slip through his fingers. "Do you see this earth?" he asked. "It doesn't care about yesterday. It doesn't hold grudges. If you work it today, it will respond today. If you care for it tomorrow, it will reward you tomorrow. But only if you show up, day after day. Do you understand?" Amir swallowed hard. For the first time, hope flickered again. The past was gone, but the future was still his to shape. Weeks turned into months. Amir's hands grew rough. His back sore, his skin darker under the sun. But his field slowly transformed. The weeds that once ruled his land were retreating. The little sapling had grown taller, its trunk firmer, its leaves greener. And Amir himself began to change. He no longer wasted hours daydreaming. He spoke less about his big plans and worked more in silence. The villagers, once skeptical, began to nod in approval when they saw his persistence. Children who used to laugh at him now ran after him, asking, "Amir, can we help water the tree?" One afternoon, a friend from the village stopped by, leaning on his hoe. "Amir, I don't understand," he said. "You used to talk so much about success, and now you hardly say a word. What happened?" Amir smiled faintly, wiping sweat from his brow. "I realized dreams don't grow in the mouth. They grow in the soil." His friend stared at him, speechless. For the first time, people saw a different Amir, one who no longer lived in tomorrow but in today. Yet the battle was far from over. Laziness, once planted, never truly dies. It waits. It lurks in the corners of the mind, waiting for weakness. And Amir knew that one slip could undo all his progress. One evening, exhausted from a long day, Amir sat by his field, staring at the growing tree. A dangerous thought crept in. Maybe I can take a break tomorrow. Just one day. But then he remembered the sight of the field overrun with weeds, the pain of regret, the humiliation in the eyes of his neighbors. His body shivered. He shook his head violently. No, not again. That night, as stars filled the sky, Amir made a vow. I will never say tomorrow again. From now on, everything begins today. And so Amir's transformation continued. The seed of ambition grew, slowly but surely, nurtured by sweat, sacrifice, and discipline. But deep down, Amir knew this was only the beginning. Because life, like soil, tests you again and again. And sometimes the hardest battles are not fought with your hands, but with your heart. And that's where we leave Amir for now, standing in the middle of his battle, fighting not just the weeds in his field, but the weeds in his heart. The question is, will he win this fight, or will laziness find a W? If you want to know what happens next, make sure to subscribe and stay with us. The rest of Amir's story might just change the way you see.